Welcome to an exclusive production of Grace on Fire Studios, where we feature life-changing solutions that will rock your world. In this show, we bring you answers to some of life's most challenging issues. Real issues, life's answers. Cultural, social, personal. Making life work. Do you feel like the world is out of control? Living life on assignment is now possible. Your questions are God's answers. And now, your host, Scott Johnson.
All right, so the question is, would Jesus wear a mask? Well, of course he would. Jesus himself said, love your neighbors as yourself. His life models the call to put the needs of others ahead of self. Then why did Jesus come into contact with the diseased lepers of his time without protecting himself? Surely he would have known that possibly he could get leprosy himself, but then become a super spreader. It's inherently selfish to consciously do things that put other people at risk. And I'm convinced that if Jesus was here today in the flesh, he'd be wearing a mask. Even if he knew it might not be effective, he would want people to feel safer. The question I have to ask is, how many times did Jesus really do things that made people feel comfortable? He made a lot of people uncomfortable. Seems to me his life challenged the fears that many people had in their lives. Still, I believe Jesus would have obeyed the mandates of wearing a mask because it would be a law in the day that Jesus lived. If you wanted to be accepted by God, to be be an honorable person, part of the community, you had to abide by the requirements of that community. Jesus broke laws all the time. To make a greater point, he wrecked everything that they held on to with the truth. Jesus was accused, in fact, of not keeping the Sabbath. He hung out with unclean people. He was very unconventional in his approach, and that's why they hated him. All those religious people and the Pharisees of his day. The Bible tells us in Romans 15:1 that we who are strong in our convictions and faith ought to patiently, put up with the weaknesses of those who are not strong and not just please ourselves. And that makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, I can go along with that to a degree, yes. Jesus saw that many in his day were trapped by the false beliefs of their culture, and he sought to bring them into the truth, but even still, they resisted the truth and chose to hold on to their fears. As you can see, there are many different ways of looking at this issue, and I don't believe that we should be, pushing our agenda down someone else's throat. Now, if you want to wear a mask, that is fine. And I'm not going to stop you from exercising your right to wear a mask. But at the same time, it also applies to the person who chooses not to wear a mask. I have a question for you. Would you bash Jesus if you saw him wearing a mask down at, let's say, Walmart? It seems to me that he loved people so much that he's not willing that people would perish and to walk in fear, and he would do whatever he could in love to educate them in his kind of way. As a Christian, we read, we quote, we sing songs about being victorious and overcomers. We stand up in church, we declare, no weapon formed against us will prosper. The question is, should we be acting in faith or should we be acting out of fear? Now you might be asking me, Scott, do you wear a mask in stores? And my answer is yes, indeed I do. But it's not because I fear that I might be spreading COVID-19 to others or somehow I catch COVID-19. I do it to alleviate the fear that seems to have gripped people's hearts. And I realize that many people in our world today only believe the mainstream dribble that comes from our media. And they don't take the time to educate themselves. So in most cases, I do wear a mask, although I do resist it at some level. The big lesson here is God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love, power and sound mind. And we are God's answer to this world. The Bible tells us, in fact, to lay hands on the sick and they will recover. And I've prayed for many people with COVID during this time. Today, I want to urge you to stand in a place of strength and not come from a place of weakness. Hey, thanks for joining me for this week's edition of Grace on Fire.